All right.
Wonderful. So hello to everybody that is joining us live. We are very excited to be part of our second discussion webinar series today. Last week we covered the topic of academics at Franklin. This week we're obviously focusing on experiential learning and what that means in terms of Franklin University, Switzerland. Just so you know, we will certainly be sending out a link to last week's sessions as well as this one. So if you do want to review that, you're able to do so. The same way all of these links are posted in the student portal, so very easily accessible to all of you. So just in terms of introductions, my name is Petra and I am joined by my colleague Catherine. We are both based out of our admissions office on campus in Lugano, Switzerland. We also have a third colleague, Kailing, who's not with us for this session, but you can find all of our contact information on the website. So if you have any questions, anything that we can certainly address, please feel free to let us know. But of course, the focus of these discussions is to bring new voices to the table. So today we are joined by three of our current students. We have Asa, Noor, and Stepan joining us, and they will be certainly sharing their own experiences with academic travel and Franklin. And we're also very, very lucky to have one of our faculty members, Professor Brack Hale, who teaches within the Environmental Studies and Sciences. So he will be sharing more of the faculty perspective in terms of how we plan everything with academic travel and how everything kind of unfolds with the entire experience. Now, certainly, we do want to kind of preface everything in terms of today's discussion. As you can imagine, that with the current events across the world, we've certainly been impacted the same way as everybody else. So most of our academic travels were grounded this spring semester, continuing more in a virtual classroom. And we certainly will see how the changes will impact our fall travels. This is something very much kind of important to Franklin's identity. So we are exploring many different ways that we can still kind of capture what academic travel means to us, even if it means staying maybe a little bit closer to home within our beautiful country of Switzerland. So do keep that in mind, and we'll certainly be informing current students as well as prospective students that will be joining us in the fall, how that will kind of unravel. So just a bit of background so that you have it is Franklin is an American and Swiss university located in Lugano, Switzerland, in the Italian-speaking part of the country. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary, so we're very, very excited in terms of the longevity of our university. And of course, something very, very signature to us is something that we refer to as academic travel. This is a great opportunity for students to explore experiential learning, which in essence, of course, kind of captures that we are bringing an experiential component to the learning atmosphere, both in the classroom as well as outside of the classroom. So just to give you a little bit of background of what we actually mean by academic travel. These are required courses that all students, regardless of if they're pursuing their undergraduate degree or coming in as transfer students, are studying abroad with us for one semester or a year, will have access to. Academic travel is part of our core curriculum, so mandatory courses that all students have to take, regardless of their academic major. And we have these options available to them as they register for their courses to basically choose an academic travel course along with the rest of their courses for that academic semester. Students are required to complete 4 3-credit academic travel courses in order to graduate from the university. Once they have completed these 4 academic travel courses, of course, it becomes optional whether they would want to take an additional course, which I think many certainly do, or they will also have the option to explore some of our 1-credit academic travels. So there are plenty of options. The key thing that we always stress to prospective students is that academic travel is a semester-long course. You will have class time here on campus in Lugano, where your class meets, you participate in all of your assignments and different kind of work components in the classroom, but we're going to incorporate a 2-week travel component to the actual curriculum to give you a little bit more of that hands-on experiential learning component to the actual course itself. So let's turn it over a little bit to one of our faculty members to kind of hear the back end of how things get planned out. So Professor Hale, we are asking you kind of what is experiential learning to you? And of course, how do you plan your academic travels and choose your locations?
Okay, thank you, Petra. So thinking about experiential learning, it's obviously, it can happen in the classroom. I mean, certainly there are ways to engage students in experiential activities in the classroom, but it's something that when you get outside of the classroom, particularly on things like academic travel, where you're in the field in a different country, in a different setting, where students interact with topics that you're studying in the classroom live is, in my opinion, and the opinion of the educational literature, that it's a much more effective way of learning, a much more powerful learning experience. And you can study, for instance, in one of my courses, you can study about tourism and its impacts on the environment. But when you go to Iceland and you see it firsthand, how tourism is affecting the environment, it makes it a much more sort of powerful experience that you will retain, where you will see different aspects, and you can engage with it much easier than you can just simply by having a classroom discussion on campus or reading about it in a textbook.
Great, thank you so much. So obviously every single semester we have different options that are available to the students, and on our website you can certainly look back to the kind of academic travel courses that we offered in fall 2019 with full course descriptions. You will also see the ones that were being offered this spring, and we'll certainly be updating it as they come. The big thing that you're going to notice and things like that is that they are always changing. So you're going to have different topics across all academic disciplines. And it's certainly kind of about the destinations that are incorporated into it in terms of what the faculty is looking into. So maybe Brack, I will turn it back over to you to just let us know a little bit more in terms of how do you kind of connect the course material to the actual destination?
Right, so thinking about the destinations we go to, they're not simply things, oh, I really want to go to Iceland. Everyone's traveling there these days. We do require that faculty have experience in a location that they are proposing an academic travel to. It is something that needs to be approved, not just by the individual department, but it goes through our campus curriculum committee. And so, there needs to be a good reason, not simply having an exciting destination, but that the destination makes sense to the topic you're studying, and that the destination is something that is accessible to everyone. Certainly going to a country where half of the students couldn't get visas to go wouldn't make sense either. And certainly going to a country that I had never been to would not make sense for a program, but also, I mean, as a travel leader, I want to know where I am, because, I want to focus on dealing with the students, not having to learn, how to get my way to get from point A to point B. So generally, we put a lot of thought into where we go to. And I think when you look at the different destinations that we are going to in a given semester and that we have traveled to, we travel the world, and and we have faculty just like our student body from all over the world, and that have experience in many different countries. And so we are able to offer a very rich set of destinations for these courses. Anything else you want me to add in there that I missed?
No, I think the greatest kind of asset to that is exactly, seeing the diversity among the faculty members, and seeing that some of them certainly have key places that they keep returning to. So I think for the students, if they don't get on that travel maybe their first time, it will hopefully come back around another semester. The same way when we get new faculty members who may come with different experiences and things like that, we will diversify kind of those offerings and options. And I think our students will certainly kind of highlight also the diversity of where they have been and how they've made those selections themselves. So Catherine, if you want to take it over and ask the students some questions.
Sure, thank you. So before we move on, I was hoping maybe we can start with Aza. Can you tell us about what trips that you have taken while at Franklin? And what were, I guess, some of your recent ones from last fall?
Sure. So I'll do reverse chronological order. So my most recent travel was supposed to be to Egypt this year. That didn't happen, but in fall 2019, I was on Iceland with Professor Hale. 2018, I went to Scotland. 2018 spring, that would be. 2017 fall, I was in Italy. 2000, 2000, whatever. So I've been to Strasbourg, Slovenia, Italy, Scotland, and Iceland. Those are my 5 academic travels.
Wonderful. Stefan?
All right, I'm gonna start from my first year because it kind of improves. So my first semester, I went to Geneva, Lausanne, Bern, and that was a introduction to entrepreneurship course. Then my second semester, I went to Munich with Professor Puka. My second year, fall semester, I went to Strasbourg with Asa, Lausanne, and Bern. So I kind of did a whole loop. Then it got better because then I did in spring I did Portugal. Then the semester after, so my junior year, I did Georgia and Azerbaijan. Then I did Morocco. And last semester I did Nice, and this semester I was supposed to go to Serbia and Croatia, but again, that didn't happen.
Thank you. And Nor?
Yeah, hi. Okay, so my freshman year, because I'd never been to Switzerland before, I picked the history of Switzerland travel, which took us all throughout. And then my freshman year spring semester, I got to do the travel to Vienna, the intro to IR travel. And then sophomore year fall semester, I went to Greece. Sophomore year spring, I went to Sicily. And then last semester, I went to Botswana. And this year, I was supposed to go to Paris and Marseille, but yeah.
Thank you. So as you can see, our students are able to, when you're here with us for more years, and we have our upper level classmen on the call with us today, you're really able to experience a lot of stuff. Can you just touch briefly on how you choose the academic travel? Maybe Nora, can you go first?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so honestly, sometimes I pick travels based on location, and sometimes I pick travels based on course content. So for example, my freshman year, I already knew that I wanted to do international relations. So I took it because it filled a prerequisite for my major, as well as like a travel to a really amazing place. Or for example, like I managed to take the travel to Botswana because it was a really amazing thing. And my registration time was open to the point where like I could get to it. So it really depends on availability as well as like what they could fulfill for your major, for me personally.
Thank you. How about you, Stefan?
My mentality works a little bit different because the way I see academic travel is a great break from your course or your actual major requirements. If you're studying A&V, you don't have to do an A&V travel. You can, I've taken 2 art history travels, 2 CLCS travels, and I'm a management major. Like, 2 don't correlate. So the way I do is I do it based on location. I want to go to the best location. And yes, my first few travels were questionable in terms of location because...
But only because you have been living in Geneva.
Yeah, basically.
You should say that.
Well, in my case, yes. It's because I live here. So for me, coming back home was a little weird for travel. But other than that, like, for example, I'll give you a case. I've been to Morocco with my family, for example, but the places that my professor took us to, I would have never gone by myself. So I think for me, it's more location rather than course. Because the course, and that's the thing I know, so frankly, you don't need to have like a strong background in that exact course. Like I said, I took art history. I don't know a thing about art history. But I still took the class and I still did well in it. So I think it depends for who and who you ask.
Thank you. How about you, Asa?
Yeah, so I think the majority of my travels have been based off of content and course disciplines, to be fair, because at the end of the day, academic travel is 2 weeks roughly of the semester, and the semester is roughly 16, 17, I don't know, weeks. So at the same time, you do need to consider the class that you're taking. I'd say a huge part is location as well, and I'd say another huge part is the for at least for me is that I know the professor beforehand. I've been fortunate enough that the travels that I've taken with professors who it was the first time I had them have turned out great. But I feel like there's a sense of comfort in knowing that, oh yeah, I've taken class with this person before. I know how this professor more or less operates. I know that this professor likes me. So I'd say that would be the most important attributes for me in deciding to travel.
Thank you. And now we want to talk about some highlights from your favorite academic travels. And Asa, since I have you here, would you mind starting?
Sure. So that I was on this travel with the photo symbolizing Scottish folk a year ago, and seeing, it's hard to pinpoint one exact moment that was really standout, but this photo here was really a nice moment because this was at the Edinburgh Castle. Definitely one of the best castles I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot of castles. We live in Switzerland, but we also, I think, just engaging in cultural and traditional Scottish traditions. I remember one night we did traditional Scottish folk dancing, which was really cool. And I know on Iceland, one of my favorite nights was when we were in Ísafjörður in the north, and we saw the Northern Lights, because that's always been on my bucket list. And then from my other travels, I was on freshwater conservation, which we went to Slovenia for, and we saw some really cool, awesome big caves. And you don't really associate Slovenia with caves. At least I didn't associate Slovenia with caves before that, but now it's the first thing I think of. And then food is always a big thing on travel. Food is always pretty good. Especially because most of the time food is provided, which is great, especially as college students. And then I'd say one final thing, just one general thing, is just bonding with other classmates and your peers, because like Stepan and Nora have touched on, not everyone takes an academic travel in their discipline. So you get to meet and hang out with people that you normally wouldn't, which is, I think, is a great thing about academic travel.
Wonderful, thank you. How about Stepan?
I always say that my best travel has been Morocco. Location, food, the group. I think I agree with us in terms of bonding with the group, because sometimes, so I've had a case where, I register for a class and you go to the pre-meeting where you sort of get the basic idea of what the class is, and you look around and you're like, well, none of these people are usually the ones I hang out with. So then you start questioning, it's like, will I have fun? But then over a time on travel, you bond with people you never thought you would. So that's one nice thing. In terms of activities, there's this one time we went camel riding. And I'm terrified of all animals, like dogs, cats, bunnies, everything. So when they lifted me up on the camel, and the camel was right next to me, the head was right, I thought it was gonna bite me the whole time, but it was so much fun. I honestly, I enjoyed that. We were going through the desert and everything. It was really cool.
Those are some good memories. Thank you. How about you, Nor?
I mean, I think freshman year on my my intro to IR travel, we had a really big group. So it split into two, and we were able to go to Budapest as well. And being able to really see Budapest, we got to see the gorgeous Parliament building. We got to see like these castles and like a whole overview of the city. And it was so gorgeous to be able to go and experience sort of like Western and Eastern Europe in these two different facets. Botswana was also a big favorite of mine. I feel like Africa travels are really like one of the centerpieces, because you get to see a lot of gorgeous nature in so many different ways, and you really get to really live a life that most people can only like read about. It's very fascinating to be able to like be in like the Delta and experience, like have dinner next to hippos. It's very cool. Like so many different travels have been so amazing in different ways.
Yeah, I know it's hard to pick. Both Petra and myself are also alumni, so we understand. And I love hearing about, the Scotland travel as well, because that's one that I did when I was a student almost 10 years ago, and we did the dancing, and I have such amazing memories of everything as well. I'd like to now ask Professor Hale, as you have been a professor for many years, maybe you can tell us exactly how long. I know it's over 10. What are some of your favorite memories over the years? And what have you taken away from these travels personally?
All right, so this is my 14th year as a professor at Franklin, and I have done academic travels every year. We also occasionally have academic travels during our summer semesters, and so I have led an academic travel twice during the summer semester to New Zealand. Yeah, I mean, I've done, I think, about 8 different destinations over the years. And certainly in recent times, I have alternated between the Iceland travel that I talked about earlier and one that is in the Swiss and French Alps, and then plus the summer travel every other year to New Zealand. Yeah, I mean, I have lots of amazing highlights. I have lots of great connections. And I think sort of to piggyback on what the students said, it's also not just a chance for the students to get to know each other much better and in a different setting, and to get to know different students. I'd say the same as for professors. I mean, we get to know students in a very different way on an academic travel, where you are with these people for 10 days, 2 weeks, all day, every day, eating a lot of meals together. And so you get a lot of different insights into students than you would just when you're sitting in a classroom. And I mean, I feel like I know students a lot better that have been on my travels. And so that's a nice memory. I think some of the things that have stood out for me, a lot of my travels are obviously environmental science travels, and we often do a lot of field work. Some of the destinations often require a fair amount of hiking. And as I think the students have mentioned, and as I think you and Petra both mentioned, we generally try to keep these travels open to everyone. They're not, if there's a prerequisite for some travels, it's only generally one course that's an introductory level course. But on most of my travels, I have not just environmental studies students, but students that study management, that study communication, that study art history, that study economics, that study literature. And so a wide diversity. And it's interesting to see the students who are coming from non-environmental fields. Some of them have had very little background being out in nature, or hiking, and they start the semester very apprehensive about this idea. Oh, we're gonna have to go hiking. We're gonna have to be out in nature for 8 hours. And then at the end, I've had just lots of students come up and say, thank you so much for making me do that, because we live in Switzerland. We have a beautiful hiking around here, and students say, I had never been hiking. I've been a student in Switzerland for 3 years and I'd never been in the mountains. And now I'm excited to go explore the area around me because I'm no longer afraid of this hiking. So having an opportunity to expose students to new things and have them try new things that they wouldn't necessarily do on their own is very exciting. Also to have students who find it perhaps more interested in the environment. I've had students after my travels, decide, oh, maybe I'll do a minor in environmental studies, or maybe I'll pick up a second major. And so that's also exciting.
I love that, thank you. So now we're going to change gears a little bit and look a little bit more in detail at one of our courses. We wanted to give you an example so you can better understand the academic component of our academic travels. And for that, I'm going to turn it back over to Professor Hale to talk about one of his travels to Iceland.
Okay, so yeah, so this travel I do every other year to Iceland, and I've been doing a travel to Iceland since 2010. And it has changed over the years as I have developed new things and developed new contacts in Iceland. I had the opportunity a couple of years ago with Franklin to do a sabbatical in Iceland for a semester. So that certainly influenced this course greatly, because I was doing research looking at the environmental impacts of tourism, and it's been great to draw upon that research and to draw upon the relationships I developed in Iceland to introduce students to that. And so we go to Iceland studying tourism and studying how the tourism and the environment interact, both in positive and negative ways. The students get involved in field research projects, as Asa got to experience firsthand. Iceland, certainly in the month of October, has very unpredictable weather. The Icelandic culture is a very flexible culture because often things get delayed and postponed. And so I think every year I have been thrown at least one wrench by the weather in Iceland. And so learning to adapt has been important, being flexible in the type of assignments, as well as in our planned itinerary. It's always a little different, but students generally get to experience Iceland and get to experience what it means to be not just a traveler in Iceland, but to see the impact that the massive increase in tourism to Iceland has had on nature, which is the primary reason people go to visit Iceland in the first place. And so they get a variety of experiences while we're in the field, whether that's field research, whether that's meeting with Icelandic scholars, whether that's visiting different sites and seeing what kinds of measures have been taken, put in place to sort of counteract the negative impacts of tourism. And so they end up doing a diverse types of work that includes analyzing data, doing research presentations, writing papers, and taking tests. And so it's a wide diversity of things that they do, and that try to complement both what we do in the classroom before and after the travel experience, as well as what we do in the field.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so speaking of learning, I'm now going to push it back to the students, and I'm asking you, what is the most unexpected thing that you learned from an academic travel course? Would anybody like to go first?
I have a little bit of an idea.
Sure.
So my past fall travel to Botswana was very interesting because we did learn a lot about like animal conservation. The course was on environmental politics. And we actually, as we were driving through one of the cities, we got to see like an election campaign. We were there during an election year. And something that we actually got to see a lot of firsthand was like there was a drought in Botswana the year that we went, and like the deltas were lowered. We were driving through places that would have been completely underwater, but were totally sandy because of the lack of rainfall that year. And even when we were camping, we ran out of water very fast, and like seeing the politics of water as well as like how much we as a group used was very eye-opening. Like we drove by a gas station and we bought a large amount of like supplies from there. And it was sort of like this odd thing to see like this group of sort of tourists really trying to be conscious, but also like the way that they interact with that environment at hand was a really odd thing to see so up close.
Thank you.
So I have something which I thought of to answer for this. So we always hear that, oh, take photos, but also look at things with your own eyes. Don't look at things through a screen, which I think, especially at the point of at this point in time, we need to consider as well. But when I was in Iceland, I remember looking at the Northern Lights, and I was like, these look nothing like they do in the photos. They're not streaks of green, purple, shades of blue. They're actually kind of white and gray, but they dance across the sky, and they're really pretty. So what was surprising was the photos actually looked nicer than the real event. but I still, it still felt so surreal just because the way they moved across the sky was really beautiful. So yeah, so I guess sometimes photos look better.
Thank you. How about you, Stefan?
In my case, not that I did this, but learning to adapt to different cultures. So I've been on travels where, for example, Georgia and Azerbaijan, when I went on that, oops, that was mine. When I went on that, like I kind of knew it because I come from that region. As an Armenian, I kind of know how the whole Caucasus region works. But for others to adapt to that culture, so for example, certain things are not appropriate to say, like, the culture of food. So the amount of food the people ate, that was surprising for them. For me, I kind of had that background, but like Petra, this as well. You were there, and we had like 16 courses, and people were freaking out because they were like, "Oh, this is too much food. How are we gonna eat it?" But that's learning and adapting to cultures. That's the one thing I took away from my academic travels. And yeah, basically.
Thank you. I think that's a great thing that a lot of the professors do try to incorporate as well. As Professor Hale mentioned, it is a place that they are familiar with, have been to before, have experience in, and I know I definitely appreciate those. It's not just, about freshwater conservation or whatever it is, but also about adapting to where you are. Thank you, Stefan. And Professor Hale, what do you hope that the students take away from your travel courses?
I mean, I think I would, emphasize what Stepan just said, that thinking about, learning to adapt to a new situation, a new culture, a new setting, and is regardless, information you learn in a classroom, you may or may not retain, you may or not be able to Google that at another point in life. But certainly learning how to interact with people, learning how to interact with environments is important, and sort of having a curiosity about the world around you. And hopefully this, I think Franklin students that come to Franklin already have this curiosity, and if we can encourage it and also help them understand how to do it in responsible and ethical ways is good. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to move on to some of our pre-submitted questions. And if any questions came up during our presentation, please do write them in and we will get to them. I am going to read, like I said, some that had come in before. So the first question is, what makes Franklin's trips different from other schools? So I think that probably by now we have a little bit of a better idea of what an academic travel is. But I would mention even the word, trip, and other trips like perhaps a study abroad, a class trip, which is maybe more like a vacation, or even a service-based trip, is more so maybe a choice that a student makes and something that they would like to be part of and they sign up for, not necessarily a course during the semester. So again, our travels are semester-long required courses. You're getting university credit, 3 credits for them, and they're available every semester as well. So we were speaking a little bit at the top of the call to see if any of our students had any experience with other types of trips, and I think that a lot of these are more, again, service-based, or even if you've been in a place, as Stefan mentioned, with your family, it's going to be a different experience to be able to go back with your professors and your classmates, and you'll have access to places and people that you wouldn't have had access to while you're on vacation. Next question. How do new incoming students register and pick their academic travels? Great question. So when you are a new student during the summer, you'll be notified when it's time in your online portal, and you can then pre-select not only your academic travel, but your first year seminar and your foreign language preference. So as was mentioned a little bit by our students, you won't have perhaps the full roster available, as the returning students have already selected their travels. But we do want to emphasize that there's no travel is a bad travel. And again, it will be completely different experience, even if you visited the place before, and you will still have, a choice, and those will be outlined to you as well. In the remaining years, you select your classes alongside your other courses when you register, which typically happens towards the end of the semester for the following. All right, next question, I'm going to shoot over to Petra. Do these courses provide credit transfers to USC, and are all costs, such as meals, included in the tuition?
Great, thanks, Catherine. So just to preface, obviously Franklin does have an agreement with the University of Southern California as well as with Southern Methodist University to offer students a freshman abroad semester or a year. So obviously, since these are agreed upon programs, the home institutions are aware that Franklin does require academic travel, and hence they will fully recognize these. Again, as we keep stressing, these are semester-long courses for credit. It could could be that some academic travels specifically for USC count towards the general requirements, while others will count for elective credit. But again, it's something that is pre-approved, and you would receive further information from your academic advisor, both at Franklin as well as USC, as you're kind of making those selections. But it's a great opportunity. In terms of the price and things like that, academic travel is included in our academic tuition. That generally covers everything from obviously the travel, getting to and from the destination, your lodging, regardless of where that may be, as well as potentially some meals. All of this information is presented to the students by the faculty member. Should students have any questions beforehand, they can certainly get those points answered. As you can imagine, a lot of the times, I think as Noor pointed out, in destinations such as Botswana, you're pretty much with your group 24 hours a day. So we definitely make sure that everything is covered for you. In other situations, you may be in larger metropolitan cities. And so the professor could give you the opportunity to have some free time as well, maybe for dinner, for lunch, for other kind of components, but you do get a lot of this information ahead of time. One of the things that I know that we had on the first slide was the fact that exactly some of our travels, and the greater majority, will be included in this tuition component, but there is generally kind of 2 to 3 courses that could carry a supplement. This is communicated to students well in advance. You know exactly kind of what the extra cost to that travel would be. Generally, it is ones that are going to further destinations from Switzerland to help cover those travel costs. They are not required, so it's not something that a student has to partake in, but obviously options that are available to them. And then one last thing that I thought maybe we just can clarify for what's out there is that the actual travel component does happen at the same time for all students. It's generally the midway point of our semester. So for the fall, it's about the last 2 weeks of October. In the spring, it's about the 2 middle weeks of March. So what happens is that most students do take 5 courses. The other 4 classes will basically be put on hold over that 2-week period. And then when everybody returns to campus, we will resume the rest of the semester. So this isn't about trying to figure out different times for everybody to do this travel component. It is something that's set and organized in our semester structure.
Thank you, Petra. I think that is really important to call out as well. I do have another question. Professor Hale, can you speak a little bit about what the fall travels could look like, or what we're looking at for this upcoming fall?
Yeah, certainly, as several of the students alluded to, certainly the current coronavirus situation and pandemic outbreak with all of the requirements, lockdown requirements that came in, affected our spring travels. And so initially they stayed on campus, and then they had to cease instruction because that was the requirement that came down through our cantonal authorities. And certainly we are thinking about this for the fall. Academic travel is an extremely important part of Franklin's education program, and we want to make sure it happens in a safe way and a way that's respectful of the global situation. And so we certainly are looking toward that in the fall. I mean, we're hoping that we will be able to go to all of our destinations, but we are certainly trying to stay a little closer to home for this fall. And we are definitely considering what our options are in case we do have a second outbreak this fall that comes along with certain requirements. And so we will keep students posted on those as much as we can, but we are certainly hopeful that we can continue to do travel this fall.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I didn't see any other questions come in. So again, as Petra said at the top of the call, please do reach out to Petra, myself, or Kai Ling if you have any additional questions. Next week, we are doing a webinar about all things life at Franklin, life in Lugano. And we did have a question that was around internships and access to organizations worldwide. So I just wanted to mention we did receive it, but we think it'll be best fit into our webinar next week. So we do hope that you can join us. Again, this is when we're going to talk about housing, living in Lugano, what you do in your free time, and things like that. Also, if you would like to continue the conversation, not with the admissions team, but with these students, the same students that we have on this call, as well as some others, we do have an opportunity for you to do so on our website called Chat with Students, which you can find, and you can then reach out to them directly if you had any additional questions. And that is where we are going to end today. So again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to our students and to Professor Hale.
Thank you guys for organizing.
Thank you.
All right.